Morning, my name is Bayani, and on today's episode of my YouTube channel, I'm going to explain why I quit my job. I'm going to explain what led me to that decision, why I decided to start my own business, my own YouTube channel, and most importantly, I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about me and what my story is, and where I just kind of envision my future from now on. My name is Bayani, and welcome to episode 002. If you do not know what you want to do with your life, just start doing things that interest you. For now, we're all just not going to be going back to work. One of the most important things in life to me was, am I doing what I really want to do? So let's start with my story. I grew up in California a good majority of my life. I'm 24 years old now, and I would say a good 90% of that life was spent in San Diego, California. If you don't know where that is, that's in the southern part of California in the United States. I grew up there a good majority of my life. I just got bit. So when I was 13, I gained this really interesting interest in movie making and video production. I don't know what it was about that actual thing that made it so interesting to me. It was just the fact that the things that I watched on screens growing up was something that I can actually make. I don't know what was so appealing about that, but it did. It appealed to me. When I was growing up and throughout my teenage years, I eventually got a camera. And I just started making just random things around the house, around school. In 2014, I graduated high school, and I really had this dream of just making movies for my career. It was just something that was a big part of my life growing up, and throughout my teenage years, something I did a lot. So when I graduated high school, it became a really big dream for me to just make things. In 2019, I officially decided that I didn't really want to go to college anymore. It just wasn't the right path for me. And just every day that I kind of went to class, it just didn't feel right. And, I was still getting to know who I was as a person at the time. But even then, I still knew, really at my core, that I was on the wrong path. Or even if I was on the right path, it just wasn't the right time for me. I don't know what it was, but it just wasn't the right way. I dropped out of college and I started working. And to be honest, that's probably one of the first decisions in my life that was very crucial to me as an adult. A lot of people grow up with the notion that they have to go to college to be successful. There's a lot of opportunities for jobs and everything. I was never really one of those people. I don't know what it was about that notion that just didn't seem very realistic, or I don't know, it just didn't make sense to me. I wanted something else than everyone else. I don't know what it was. This bee is not leaving me alone. I'm trying to tell my story, and it ain't letting me. I'm a little mad. So after I left college, I got a job and I started working in retail, and it wasn't supposed to be something that I had for a while. It was supposed to be something that I had just so I can make some money and to figure out what I exactly wanted to do with this next part of my life, since I was basically just switching up plans that I've had my whole life. And this part of my life was actually very important. I call this the retail chapter. It was a very, very important step in my overall story. I was in retail for 5 years, and a lot of people think a lot of opinions about their job, but for me, it was exactly what I needed in my life. I feel my 5 years in retail were a very, very important part of my career. Without those 5 years, to be honest, I don't think I would have gotten to this step right here. Now let's talk about why I decided to leave then. Earlier this year, the whole world got hit by a pandemic. And this pandemic pretty much put a lot of people on what's known as furlough. And basically that meant for a while I just wasn't gonna have a job. So that moment in my life was actually very interesting. I remember getting the call actually. So I was just in my girlfriend's room while she was at work. And then I got the call from my boss, and she told me that we weren't going back to work. It was only supposed to be 2 weeks, but it turns out that this ain't gonna be a 2-week thing. It's gonna be a much, longer thing. Gonna adjust you guys. There we go. Basically, no one knows, how this is gonna turn out. But for now, we're all just not gonna be going back to work. I think it's always an interesting feeling when you realize, you don't technically have a job. Technically I wasn't let go, but it's pretty much the same feeling. Those 2 weeks turned into around 3 months. Everyone was kind of inside, everyone was in quarantine, everyone was, for the most part, wasn't working, or if you were working, you were an essential worker. 3 months later, after I got the call from my boss, I got another one. So one of my district managers called me, and he just said, we're going back to work. I know you're out of town, but can you come back into town by Friday? And, I said, yeah, sure, I could. It was a little bit of a tight turnaround, but I was like, okay, sure. After I hung up the phone, I started to really contemplate kind of the idea of going back to work, going back to specifically the type of work I've been in for almost 5 years. And I don't know, it just didn't feel right for me. And those 3 months, felt like a time where I really think about my priorities in life, to see what's important, to see what's not important. And one of those important things that kept coming up in my mind throughout those 3 months was, maybe I should just start my own business, I feel if I would have started earlier on, around maybe right when I graduated high school, or even before that, it just wouldn't make sense to me. I was a very different person when I was 18. I was still the same person, but just I wasn't ready. The character wasn't there, my independence wasn't there, the leadership wasn't there. And it was back to, when I was 18. It was that same dream, it was that same goal that I wanted to do in my life. Something that I was eventually gonna do when my retail career kind of ended. But I thought to myself, why wait? If the quarantine and this pandemic taught me anything, it was there are things that are important in life and there are things that are not important in life. So I feel like my time in retail was a very crucial part in my story, in getting to here and to starting my own business and to starting my own YouTube channel, and really just, going back to my original dream of, making videos, of making movies and telling stories. I'm glad that it came full circle for that, and I'm glad it kind of came at this time in my life, because, even though I'm only 24, I still have been a type of person that doesn't really like to waste time. It just never really been me. I've always had a pretty good idea what I want to do with my life, what I wanted to accomplish. One of the most important things in life to me was, am I doing what I really want to do? If there's anyone out there that's kind of struggling to figure out what they want to do with their life, because they never really had an idea, my one advice that I've always told people, if you do not know what you want to do with your life, just start doing things that interest you, and eventually throughout that journey of just trying stuff and just seeing any potential leads of what you could do with your life, then just do it. It doesn't have to be the grand all scheme. You don't have to know exactly what you want from 16, at 14, at 12, or even at 25, it's not an exact plan. I still think that Steve Jobs said it best when he said,
again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards.
Which brings us back here into my studio. First off, if you watched the whole video, thank you very much. I appreciate it. The second thing is I want my YouTube channel and my personal brand to start off on a good foot. I want the first or second video to really talk about who I am and what my story is and what my story was before coming onto YouTube, and documenting my first few steps into that online space. I have a lot of ideas of where my channel can go and what direction I can take from it. But I wanted to start it off on a good foot to talk about the most important thing to me, which is just talking about who I am and talking about my story, just so that there's anyone that wants to reference back to where I started on my YouTube channel, it's going back to this exact video. Well, anyways, thank you guys for watching up until this point. Remember to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.